Hey, and welcome into the inaugural episode of Inside the War Room. I'm your host, Jayden Sormani. Today, we're going to be going over the top 25 free agents list that Greg Rosenthal put out for NFL.com. We're going to be going through all of them and just kind of seeing where I predict them to go, kind of how much they're making, what teams. So this is all just speculation. This is not anything, I don't know anything extra, just kind of things I think would be fun or would fit. Just some ideas out there. So we're going to roll this little intro, and we're going to go from there.
Yeah, treat your smoke like it's mine. Yeah, got your whip like it's mine. Yeah, with your click like it's mine.
All right, welcome back to the podcast. This is obviously the first episode. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to the channel, as we're going to be doing this at least once a week, if not multiple times, as well as we're keeping up with everything. 17 mock drafts. I have another one coming out soon, sometime this weekend, and I got the regular mock drafts as well that I do a couple weeks at a time. So you got to stay tuned if you want to get some draft coverage, because we're going to be following it all the time. Of course, leave a like, leave a comment down below as well. But today we are going to be covering the top 25 free agents. Greg Rosenthal put this out on NFL.com, and it's a pretty solid list. I added 2 extra bonus players that I just thought were fun because they're in weird situations. But other than that, I have this list I created just based on what I think they're going to make in the market, who I think they're going to go to. And, of course, this is all speculation. This is all just a fantasy world. None of this is actually happening. If some of them happen, it's cool. But in reality, we don't know if any of these are going to happen. I just thought it'd be fun to do. And, of course, if you're new here, I know I just said to subscribe, but make sure you leave some comments down below. Tell me who your team is. Tell me who you think you guys should be targeting. For me, I do look at the salary caps, the projected salary caps for the offseason. I look at who the team has that they're going to need to re-sign, who they're going to need to cut, that kind of stuff, to make sure that the team can afford not only to pay a player, but that he would be a fit as well. So it is a lot more than just sticking a name to a sheet. So if you wouldn't mind leaving a like, it does help out a lot. But we're going to start off, and this is his list, not mine. I did not create this list. I just went off of it. So if the ranking is different for you, you got to take it up with him, Greg Rosenthal. But at number 1, he has Dak Prescott being the number 1 free agent in the NFL this offseason. And I kind of understand it. He's young. He's the best talent that you're going to get at quarterback in this offseason because of his youth and because he has potential. He's nearing his peak. And he had an amazing season, which is a big oops for the Jones family for not paying him earlier in the year. But I do have him going back to the Cowboys for about $33 million a year. Now, he wants $40 million. They were trying to pay him $30 million. And when you look at it, Russell Wilson got his contract this season, and he is making $35 million a year. He's not Russell Wilson, and that's the problem. I think he had a solid year, and I know that's very good, especially for Cowboys fans. They saw a lot of progress. One of my best friends is a Cowboys fan, and he said the thing that he regrets most is paying Zeke before paying Dak, because Dak went out there like it was his contract year, played his heart out, played an amazing season, and is now probably going to be closer to that $40 million range. The problem is that they don't have that much money to spend after they sign some of their guys, because a lot of their top guys are free agents this offseason, so they're going to have to pay those guys. But Dak Prescott to the Cowboys for $33 million, I think it's a good fit. McCarthy's going to want to work with him, is from what I gather, and you kind of need to keep him there because he fits the timeline. Him and Zeke came out of the same class. You have guys like Jalen Smith who are around the same age, Van Der Esch, he's part of that timeline that they have. So if you draft another quarterback, you're kind of ruining that timeline to where these guys are going to be at their careers at the same time. So I think it's not – they're a team that should be able to win the division at least for a couple more years before these younger teams like the Redskins and Giants start to build up more. So I think that the reason that they need to do this is because they need to stick in winning mode right now. And in 3 years later down the line, when you have to pay all these guys who are nearing 30 years old, which will be Jalen Smith, Dak Prescott at the time, you'll be able to focus that and cross that bridge later. But pay Dak now, get him on your thing, $33 million for about 4 years, I'd say, and go from there, because I think that's a big signing. Now, moving on to number 2, Chris Jones from the Kansas City Chiefs is the number 2 free agent on Greg Rosenthal's list. I have him staying with Kansas City for 4 years at about $19 million a year. The reason why is because the most you're getting out of a pass rusher like Chris Jones is what Aaron Donald's getting paid, and that's close. That's $23 million, and same thing with Khalil Mack and everything. I think Chris Jones is very good. I think he's close to it, but I don't think he's that far from it. And also, Kansas City doesn't have that much cap space, as you can imagine, as well as they're going to have to pay Mahomes in a couple years, but they're ready to kind of do that contract now. The bright side is that they kind of have their team locked down to where they don't really have anybody leaving in free agency. That's too much of an impact player. Like Terrell Suggs is leaving. I think Maurice Claiborne's leaving. Like it's guys that are replaceable through the draft and through other things. So if you can keep Chris Jones, because I mean even in the AFC Championship game, you saw that he wasn't 100%, but when he was in there, you knew he was in there. He was creating pressure. Tannehill was not getting away from him a lot of the time. So a guy like Chris Jones needs to stay on that team. I think he was a big project piece for them, and it worked out so well for them. I think they need to keep him. Him and Frank Clark can keep wreaking havoc on that line. I think that they're building something special on the defense. So you can build up the secondary more in the draft if you need. I think that this is a guy that you need to retain if you're Kansas City, because in reality, you don't need to go for anybody else. Go with the guy that fits your system, that fits your team. Spagnuolo loves him. Lock him up for about 4 more years for $19 million, and I think that $19 million a year, I think that will be the right fit for the Chiefs fans and for Chris Jones. Then we go on to number 3 on the list, and that is Amari Cooper, also from the Dallas Cowboys. And I have him staying in Dallas as well for about $16 million a year for 4 years. Like I said, it's part of that timeline. Amari, Dak, Zeke, Jalen Smith, Vander Esch, DeMarcus Lawrence. These guys are all the same age. They're growing together as a team, and it's proving well. They have the right team. They lost the division. It was a poor end of the year. They need some pieces. They got their new head coach. They're hoping that they can make that next step. You can't let a guy like Amari Cooper leave when you paid the draft picks to get him, and he is the reason that you guys have won a lot of games. There's still concerns about his drops, but they've gotten a lot better. And me and my friend Josh have also had long conversations about this, about Amari Cooper. And the thing is, you need to pay him simply because Michael Gallup has proven he can't be that number 1. He needs to be the number 2 option. And the fact is, Dak and Amari have a great connection. Amari really separates that offense to make it to where they can't just focus in on Zeke. They can't just focus in on rushing Dak. They have to worry about other things. He was the difference maker when he came. Once he came to Dallas, it was like we got a new Amari Cooper. It was like we got the original Amari Cooper that Oakland drafted at the time. He was insane. He was making great plays, making great catches. He's proving his route running abilities again, and that's what you want to see from a guy like Amari Cooper. And I think he has earned that paycheck, especially from Dallas. Like I said, they have like $71 million in cap space, I believe. That's going to go away once you pay Dak and Amari, which means you're not going to be able to pay other guys, which I have later down on the list. But you need to focus in on Amari Cooper and Dak Prescott because those are the things. Your defense has been solid. It's been solid for a lot of years now. Yes, you need secondary pieces, but like I said, draft and you can re-sign other people. But those are the guys that you need to, because if you let one of them go, it's going to change your offense completely, and you don't know what you're getting next year if you let one of them go. So lock them down. $16 million a year for 4 years for Amari Cooper to stay in Dallas. Now we go over to Jadeveon Clowney. And this one is the first one where he's leaving his team, I'd say, which is weird because the Seahawks got him. It was a fairly decent price. It was pretty cheap. So I think if Seattle can't retain him, it's not the biggest deal to them. But they'd like to retain him. But I think that they have other issues that they need to address, and I think that they have a good enough pick to where they can get an edge rusher in the draft, or they can go after another edge rusher maybe for cheaper. So I have Clowney leaving, and I have him going to the Baltimore Ravens on a 3-year, $18 million deal per year. And I think that the reason that's a huge thing is because the Baltimore edge rushing was horrible this year. Judon had a great year, and Judon deserves all the praise. He's going to get a payday. But they need to get help on that edge, and I think that Jadeveon Clowney can do that for them. So I have, later down on the list is Matt Judon at about, I think 22 is what it says. And I think that Clowney, ironically, might be a little bit cheaper than Judon just because of Judon's production. But you look at what Jadeveon has done and how much of an impact he can have on a team. And when you put him on a team like Baltimore, the thing about Clowney is he wants to be on a winning team. He doesn't want to go to a rebuilding situation, I feel like. Yes, he wants that bag, and he's going to get that bag. But Clowney needs to get his money, and he needs to be on a winning team. And I think he just fits the culture of Baltimore a lot. I think he'd love playing with the guys like Lamar Jackson and Mark Ingram. I think that's something that they would really like. So to get him on the edge, I think that'll boost their edge up a little bit. and they can build up either within the draft or maybe sign a low-key free agent who's been decent to build more. But Jadeveon Clowney would be insane to put on Baltimore. So I think that would be fun to see. I think that would be something good for him, good for the team, and good for his bank as well. So for about 3 years, $18 million a year, I have Jadeveon Clowney going to Baltimore. Then we go over to number 5, and that's Shaq Barrett, the Tampa Bay sack machine. I mean, he was leading the NFL in sacks so early on in the season, hit double digits. I think it was like week 6, he was already in double digits, which was just crazy to see. And that's why he's going to get a payday this offseason, because those sack numbers, everyone wants to pressure the quarterback in the league this year. But unfortunately, nobody is going to get Shaq Barrett other than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay has a lot of cap space this year, and I think they're going to spend about $15 million a year for the next 4 years on Shaq Barrett. When you look at the salary caps, they're number 2 in the off. They're projected to have about $91 million in cap space, closer to 92, and they're going to be able to spend money, And a lot of that has to do with are they going to retain Jameis Winston? If they do that, okay, what are they going to pay him? But I think that you need to get Shaq Barrett there because he has proven to be such an impact player for your defense. Pierre-Paul is getting old. You let McCoy walk, and you let him cut him, or you cut him or whatever, but you need to get Barrett back. Like, it's another thing about fitting the timeline. He's there as much as the other guys are around that same age, so you can't let him get out of that system because he fits so well into it. I think he had such a great year, and I think that other teams are going to try and pay a lot for him. So I think you can get that discount for him to stay where he is right now. I don't think he doesn't enjoy where he is. I think he likes being the star of that defense. Keep him as the star of your defense, Shaq Barrett, for 4 years, $15 million a year, and keep him in Tampa Bay. Now we move on to number 6, and this is huge because, he's a Pro Bowler this year, and no one thought of him. I've always been a huge fan of this guy, and that's Ryan Tannehill, and I have him receiving the franchise tag from the Titans, and I really don't see a way they don't do this. It keeps Tannehill getting money in his 30s, so it's understandable that they don't want to pay him a long-term deal. I think he had a great season, but I think you can't pay him a multi-year contract based on a good season. If you pay him the franchise tag, you're going to get him for another year. You can end up paying him next year if you like. But if this was just a spoof season, if this was just a Case Keenum season, you're going to want to tag him because he is the quarterback of this team. There's no doubt about it. They need to have Tannehill back quarterbacking that team in 2020, but they need to keep him on the tag because you don't want to commit long term. If he goes out there, has a horrid season next year, maybe they miss the playoffs, unfortunately, you can go after a guy like a Justin Fields or a Trevor Lawrence. That's going to be a big boost for them. But if he goes out there and plays well, he can earn his money next year, and I think that's just as huge for him. But you give him the franchise tag, you pay him the tag, whatever it is. It's usually up in almost $30 million, which is going to hurt. Don't get me wrong. But you have to be able to pay Ryan Tannehill the money that he earned while also not ruining your franchise in the future. You look at the Jaguars paying Nick Foles. You look at the Broncos paying Case Keenum. Luckily they were able to trade that contract for Flacco, but you get what I'm saying. You can't overpay for a guy based on 1 year. As much as I like the guy, I think he deserves the money. He's going to get the money. It's just not going to be a long-term deal. So give him the franchise tag and keep him on your team for another year, see how you like him, see how he responds, and go from there. I think it's a good investment. I think you're good there. Now we go to Yannick Ngakoue, the edge rusher out of Jacksonville. He has been a beast, and I think they're going to retain him for about 4 years, $19 million. I think it was the president or it was somebody in their organization, their front office, that said that they're not worried about Yannick. They're going to get a deal done sooner than later. They're going to get it done. That's what they're saying, and I believe them. When you look at Ngakoue, he's been easily their best edge rusher for the past few years. Calais Campbell has proven to be such a mighty piece on that D-line as well. Plugging holes. He gets around well on the edge as well, but he's also been teaching guys like Ngakoue and Josh Allen, and at the time Dante Fowler, Taven Bryan, all these different guys. So I think that when you go to Ngakoue, I think he's earned this contract because he's played so well, and you're going to pay him like a top edge rusher. The top edge rushers are getting like up $23 million like we talked about. So getting like $19 million for Ngakoue, I think that's the right move. He could get Aaron Donald money. It could go up to maybe 22, 23, which is crazy, but you might need to pay him that. But I think that having him and Josh Allen on the opposite sides, especially with Calais Campbell being as old as he is, possibly even retiring, we don't know. But I think that you need to shore up your edges for a while because this is a young team. You think about it. If you can get Foles' contract off the books, or even if you just take the dead cap, pay pay the taxes and everything like that. You have Minshew on a rookie deal. You're not going to have to pay him. Shark's on a rookie deal. You're not going to have to pay him. You got 2 first-round picks this year, so you're not going to have to pay those guys, and those are going to be starters because they're both first-rounders. I mean, you have a lot of options. I mean, Ronnie Harrison in the safety, rookie deal. I think this is something that Jacksonville needs to do. I think you need to shore up your guy because I think they still could use some talent on the edge because if not, you're going to have to waste a draft pick on it. Yes, you could spend the money elsewhere in free agency, but get your guy, keep him in the building, and go from there. Now we move on to number 8, and that's Drew Brees. And this is the first one where I kind of went kind of deep into it. I have Drew Brees staying with the Saints on a 2-year, $25 million deal with a team option on it. So I think that Brees, I don't see Brees playing football anywhere else. I also don't see him retiring. I think he's too fired up. I think he's too good to retire. I think Teddy B is going to get great money in free agency. Taysom Hill is probably going to get some money as well. So the Saints have to retain somebody to play quarterback. And do they want to take a risk at where they're picking to hope that maybe a Jordan Love or a Herbert falls to them? I mean, maybe they can take a chance on a Hurts or an Eason. Yeah, it's possible. But I think you get your guy, and even if you want to do that, you can have them learn behind Brees, kind of take over like we've seen for Eli Manning with Daniel Jones this year. I think you can do that. The reason I have that team option is because after this year, if you decide you want to go with a younger guy, or if you want to draft a guy, or if you want to just part ways with him, you can do that. And he'll probably retire after that, and that'll be it, and you won't have to worry about it. But if you do want to keep him for that second year, maybe he has an MVP season next year, you keep him and you get him another year. You play him until then. I think he still wants to keep playing. I think that he kind of wants to, in that competitive nature in him, I think he wants to keep surpassing Brady before, because they're fighting with the records. I think he wants to keep playing until he can say that he is done enough for his own self. He's a competitive guy. He's a very loyal guy. He loves the city of New Orleans. I think that that's why he's going to stay there. I mean, you could see him maybe go back to the Chargers where they drafted him, but with after everything with that and how he went to the New Orleans, I think he'll just want to stay in New Orleans at this point. So I keep him there for 2 years, $25 million a year, and give him the team option. And that's what we're going to be doing with Drew Brees. And we're going to go over to his competitive friend in Tom Brady at number 9. And I have him staying in New England as well. I only have him on a 1-year, $18 million deal. I think they're kind of going to do what the Cardinals are doing with Larry Fitzgerald, where until he says he wants to retire, they'll just pay him 1-year deals and just keep agreeing to it until then. I think that a lot of this stuff about, he doesn't know where he's going to play and all this, I think it's just the media blowing everything out of proportion. I think he wants to stay in New England. I don't see a reason why he wouldn't stay in New England. I don't see a reason why he would go to another team. It's possible. I've seen a lot of people saying he might want to go to the Colts, which would be kind of cool, but I think he's going to stay in New England. I think that they're still a good enough team to compete. As long as Belichick and Brady are there, they're going to compete. And, he has young guys there. And also they don't have another guy, so I think that they would be dumb to let him walk. So Tom Brady for $18 million a year for 1 year. You keep him there, and then, like I said, do the Larry Fitzgerald stuff. If you want to pay him, you just keep going. Then we go to number 10. Number 10 on the list is Justin Simmons, the safety from Denver. A lot of people probably don't even know this name, but he's been low-key a very, very good free safety. He's been a multiple-time All-Pro, I believe, and he is going to be getting a good bag this offseason. I'm getting about $14 million for 4 years, and the team he's going to be going to is right where he lives right now in Denver. And I know a lot of these guys are staying with their teams, and it kind of sucks, but that's, you got to realize free agency is like that. A lot of the top guys, they get paid because their teams understand their value. But there's more guys towards the bottom later in this list that are going to be going elsewhere. So Justin Simmons, I mean, they have a good amount of money. It's another situation like I was saying before with the Jaguars. I mean, you look at it, rookie quarterback in Drew Lock, he's on that rookie deal. Courtland Sutton, you have to pay for, I think, another next year. You'll probably have to pay him. So I mean, you have younger guys. You're kind of in a younger setting, so why not get a guy like Justin Simmons who's been loyal to the team, he's grown with the team, and he's become one of the better free safeties that we have in the NFL. Pay him the right money and keep him in Denver. I think that there's no reason that you shouldn't do that. I think he helps that defense out a lot. Now we go on to number 11, AJ Green. He wants the money. He has said it multiple times. He wants the money, and he wants it long term. He doesn't want to be out of money in the next year. He doesn't want a 1-year deal. He doesn't want to be tagged. He wants the money for multiple years. So I have Cincinnati giving him that contract at about $12 million a year for 3 years. Maybe he won't agree to this. Maybe he'll want more money, but I don't see him getting more money, especially with how many injuries he's had, especially the past few years. When you look at, it's kind of going against what I've just been saying, but when you look at Cincinnati, Tyler Boyd, is a solid receiver. Auden Tate had a pretty decent year. I don't see him as like a future guy for them, but he could be. John Ross has never really panned out at the receiver standpoint, but he's still on the roster. Maybe they look to draft someone with like a second or third round pick since it's such a deep class. But you're gonna have Joe Burrow most likely at quarterback, and I don't think you want him to go into a situation where on his offense he doesn't have a good tight end. If you keep Tyler Eifert, which he's not even on this list, obviously, he's not gonna have a good receiving core. He's going to have a good running back, but that doesn't help him grow as a starter. So I think if you're planning on taking Joe Burrow, you are planning on paying A.J. Green because you need somebody to throw the ball. You need somebody to get the ball to A.J. Green if you want to use A.J. Green, obviously. And I think if you want Joe Burrow to succeed and you want him to grow better, having a guy like A.J. Green, who's probably a future Hall of Famer with how great of a career he's had, it's just the injuries have been plaguing him. You need to keep him on the roster. Have Burrow learn from him. Kyler Murray's learning a lot from Larry. He has Larry as a setback option to where he can always trust that he's going to be there. He can learn from him. He can understand more. AJ Green's going to do that for Burrow, and I think that they'll have a good connection. So pay the man. You're going to have a rookie quarterback. You have a relatively young team. You're in a rebuilding phase. So pay AJ Green the money that he deserves, even though the injuries have happened. His talent's probably, I still think it's there. So he's not getting a big bag. It's kind of like where Alshon Jeffrey, Keenan Allen are being paid right now. So 3 years, $12 million, keep him in Cincinnati. Now we go to Byron Jones, the corner from the Dallas Cowboys, and he's actually going to be moving teams. We talked about this earlier where the Cowboys have a lot of cap space, but when you look at the people they have to re-sign, you realize that cap is going to be gone relatively quickly. So unfortunately, Byron Jones is going to be the casualty cut, and I have him going to the division rival New York Giants for 4 years, $15.5 million. Now with the Giants, if they like somebody, they're gonna pay, or they're gonna do what they need to do to get them. They just got Jason Garrett. They just got the offensive line coach as well. Now, none of those are defensive coordinators. I understand that, but Garrett is the head coach. He knows his players, and they're both from Dallas. They're both from the Cowboys. They know what this team needs. And when you look at the Giants, the only corner that should be getting the playtime next year is DeAndre Baker. They cut Janoris Jenkins. They really didn't have anyone else. They played so many rookies at corner this year that they were getting burnt on routes all the time. Baker ended up ending the season pretty well. He looked pretty solid towards the end of the year. You need somebody to have him on the other side. So if you have a young guy in Baker to learn from a guy like Byron Jones, I think that's huge. Byron Jones' athleticism is out of this world. He's been one of the best corners in the league the past few years, which has been really good for the Dallas Cowboys. Unfortunately, they're not going to be able to retain him. I think that he is going to be a good fit. He's the new Janoris Jenkins for the Giants, to where they're going to pay him at this point and have him play for these years and hope it works out. I think it will work out. The Giants have a lot of money in free agency. We're gonna talk about a guy later on for them as well. Actually, I have two more guys, but I think that this is just a fit that works out. Jason Garrett's gonna pitch it to Gettleman and Tisch and Mara. So I think that's something that it should be done. There's a lot of teams that are looking for corners, and a lot of teams that are going to pay for a corner. But I think if you're the Giants, you realize what you have in the secondary. You need to pay somebody. Pay a guy that's the top of the line in Byron Jones. Get your corner situation fixed a little bit and go from there. Then you move on to number 13 on the list, and that is Joe Thuney out of the New England Patriots. And I have him staying in the division but going to Miami for about $14 million a year for the next 4 years. He's not the youngest of guards, but he has been one of the most solid guards. Obviously the New England offensive line always looks good, so you don't know how it's going to pan out. But, man, Miami does not have any player on the offensive line that should be there as a starter next year. There's probably going to be, but they do not have anybody that should be there. And they have all the money in the world. They have the most cap space going into free agency at about $94 million. So when you look at a guy like Thuney, you're going to want to pay him to protect whoever you have a quarterback next year. You need to have some protection for whoever is going to be back there. And you start that out with Thuney. You can build through the draft. You have a lot of draft picks. You could spend more free agent money on other guys as well if you want to build it quick. But you need to have somebody there who can learn, the other guys can learn from. And I think this is a guy that's going to do well in that, and he's learned a lot from the Patriots. He's done well in the Patriots. I think that he deserves the money that he can get, and I don't know if New England can pay him that. So Thuney going to Miami for $14 million a year for the next 4 years seems like a good deal to me. Then we go on over to Brennan Sherrill out of the Washington Redskins, he's been injury plagued, and it sucks for his career. But when he's playing, he's one of the better guards that we have in the NFL, and he's going to get some money somewhere. I think that Washington, even though they need to protect their quarterback, I don't know if they're going to pay Trent Williams. I don't know if they're going to pay Brennan Sherrill, but I don't have them paying him. I have him moving on to Seattle for about $13 million a year for the next 3 years. The reason I have it 3 years, not a longer deal, is because those injury concerns. I don't think that a team is going to pay him a 4 or 5 year deal, because if he's getting injured like this, you don't want to waste one of those years and then him not be as progressive, because he is getting up there he's getting in his late 20s. So it's something you got to worry about. He is one of the better right guards. And I think that Seattle has always lacked offensive line talent, and if you get a guy like Sherrill, he can change the dynamic. Russell Wilson won't have to run around as much as he does. So you get a guy like that, it's going to be huge for you, and I think that he'll help out that team a lot. I think that he's somebody that the Seattle should actually worry about paying, because they need to figure it out. They need to get somebody on the offensive line that can do something for them. So get him Brennan Sherrill and help out Russell Wilson out there, because that's something that needs to get done. Then you go on over to number 15 on the list, Hunter Henry, the Los Angeles Chargers tight end. I have him getting the franchise tag because the injury bug has gotten him for years. It sucks for his career because he's such a talent when he's out there, but he's been getting injured, and it sucks for young guys. It sucks for that, but when you look at the team, I think they're moving in a new direction. I don't think Phillip Rivers is going to come back. He just moved out of San Diego or LA. I think his house was in San Diego. He moved out, so I think it's going to be a new regime. You need to have your younger weapons, and that is Hunter Henry. So tag him. If he plays well, you give him the money that he deserves, but those injuries are a concern. That's why I think you just lock him down on the tag, and you see where you go from there, because, he's worth being on the roster. Then you go on over to number 16, Phillip Rivers, another Los Angeles Charger, apologies. And I have him getting a contract from no one. I have him entering the retirement phase of his career. Call it a career. He had a pretty good career. There's going to be talks about his retirement as well. Obviously not to the magnitude of Eli Manning's, but Phillip Rivers is one of the better quarterbacks that we've had for the past 20 years. So I think that's a huge thing for Rivers to just know when to call it quits. He has that competitive fire, but go raise your 27 kids. They just moved to, I think it was Miami or something like that. They moved somewhere into Florida, their house, because they said it's going to be better for living for them and their family. So enjoy your retirement. You've made a lot of money. Enjoy your time. Keep your health and raise your kids right, and go from there. We might see another Rivers in the NFL in a decade or two. So I think he moved there, and I think he's going to announce his retirement at the right time. I just don't see another team giving him a contract. He didn't have a good year. The Chargers had such an underwhelming year as well. I don't see the Chargers getting him a contract, most likely because he moved, and I don't see him getting a contract from another team unless it's like a mentorship role. So I don't have him getting a contract. I have him retiring, and I think that's the best career move for Rivers. Then at pick number 17, Cory Littleton has earned himself a contract, and I don't think it's going to come from the Rams. I think it's going to become from the newly named Las Vegas Raiders. I think they're going to pay him about 5 years, $13.5 million. He's semi-decently young, but I think that Gruden and Mike Mayock will do their homework on everybody that they want to bring in, and they realize, with Vontaze Burfict not there, they had a significant hole in middle linebacker. They cut Brandon Marshall, then they brought him back in, and they have Tahir Whitehead. They have other guys, but nobody has been a surefire, we need to keep this guy here. You need somebody to control that defense, and that's Cory Littleton. He's done a great job for the LA Rams, and I think that he's going to be doing a great job for Gruden's Raiders. They need to get some help on the defense. They're a little whiles away from being a competitive team, but they've shown competitive spirit. Gruden has got them to be one of the better teams this year. They had a chance to make in the playoffs, even with the last week, I think it was, or the last 2 weeks. So they're definitely a team that can compete. They need a couple pieces. They have a couple draft picks this year, so they have the base of it, and I think that they're a talented roster. They had a huge hit on Josh Jacobs. Max Crosby was a great pick. Cleveland Farrell is a pretty solid pick as well. They've been doing well on drafting, especially last year. So I think that you get Cory Littleton, maybe draft another linebacker, and you see where you can go with all that. But Littleton would be a huge upgrade for you, can easily be a captain of your defense for the next 5 years to come and be a part of this team that you really are going to build up. Then we go on to number 18 on the list, Leonard Williams from the New York Giants, traded there from the New York Jets, and they didn't trade him to let him go. Gettleman in his press conference said that the reason they traded for him is because they wanted to make sure that he would fit, he would like it here, and they thought it was worth the picks. Now, was it worth the picks? That's to be seen, but I think it was worth it to them. I think they're going to pay him 4 years, $18 million a year. That's a pretty solid contract. That's what Clowney's getting. That's a little bit under Ngakoue. But, I mean, all these edge rushers, you never know what they're going to make because, I mean, Aaron Donald and Khalil Mack are making upwards of $23 million. So these guys couldn't make that much. But, Leonard Williams, he's more of a run-stuffing guy, and he did his role in the Giants. He's not a guy who's going to get you these huge numbers. That's what the Jets wanted, and that's not what he is. What he's going to do is he's going to disrupt the rush. He's going to get in there. He's going to take up 2 blockers, and he's going to make his presence known and felt. He's going to be game planned against. So Leonard Williams definitely deserved to get a bag, and he said that no matter what in free agency, he wants to get paid like a top guy. So pay him like one of the other top guys they're going to be getting. Keep your guy in-house. Leonard Williams for $18 million for the next 4 years for the Giants. I think that's big. That's kind of that keeps him in line with Byron Jones' contract, so they'll be getting out at the same time. And the Giants like to spend their money in that kind of sense where they buy a couple guys for about the same amount of contract length. And that's like their window of opportunity is what you'd say, I guess. So Leonard Williams there to stay in the building and in New York for the Giants and get his money there. So Byron Jones and Leonard Williams are going to be going to the Giants or staying with the Giants in Leonard Williams' sense. Then you go on to number 19, Jameis Winston. I have him getting franchise tagged as well. I think that we saw a weird year. The 30-30 year was such a weird year for Winston because he showed flashes of being really, really solid, especially on that offense. And he's shown just horrible passes. So we don't really know where it is. But Arians took that job because I think he wanted to coach Winston, and they wasted that first round pick on him, first overall pick. So unfortunately, they don't have a Tannehill to kind of let them get past their top 1 or 2 selection in the Mariota sense, but I think that he earned his contract because of the 30 touchdowns and the yards he had. I mean, he was right up there with Dak Prescott in yards. I mean, you look at Evans and Godwin, both had amazing years. Howard didn't have that good of a year, unfortunately, but I think that that's huge for them. So I think you go from there. I think you give him the tag, and hopefully he earns his contract next year. But I think he's worth keeping on the roster because you don't really have a backup plan right now unless you decide that you want to take a quarterback with your pick, and in that sense, then go ahead and do that and let Winston walk. But I think he deserves to at least be tagged. If not, you pay him. See if he takes a 1-year deal, maybe $20 something million, which is still a lot of money. But I think that's a starting quarterback, so you still need to pay him. But yeah, I think he should be franchise tag. Keep him on the roster for 1 more year, and then if you need to pay him later. Now we go to Derrick Henry, who single-handedly carried this Titans team to the playoffs this year with Tannehill, and they just had an amazing year. Fell short in the AFC Championship, unfortunately, to the Chiefs. But Derrick Henry is that running back where if you give him the carries and you let him gain his confidence, he's going to prove to be the right. It's going to be proved to be the right move for you. So I have him getting $14 million a year for the next 4 years from the Titans. I don't see a way they don't keep him. You have Deion Lewis behind him. There's nothing really else there, and he has shown he's an impact one. He led the NFL in rushing this year. So he is an impact guy. He's one of the best running backs we have in the NFL. There's nobody in the draft, let alone in the NFL, like him. Built like him, runs like it's. He is his own guy. I mean, that's it. There's nobody like him. So pay him, give him the money that he deserves. He's been very quiet. He's been very humble. So just get him the contract he deserves. Keep Tannehill and Henry together, and you hope that maybe you get back to the championship next year, and maybe you can take out the Chiefs or whatever you can do. So I think the Titans should be taking Derrick Henry here for about $14 million a year. It's a little bit under what Gurley and what's his name, Zeke are making, but I think that's just because they're more all-around backs. They can do the pass game when they got paid at least in Gurley's stance. So I think a little bit less than them, but definitely should be getting paid. Then we go over to Anthony Costanzo at 21 from the Colts. I have him getting franchise tagged. He's been a very, very solid piece for that Colts team, and I think that there's not enough. There's no one around. There's no one around left tackle in this free agency class that's worth replacing him with. And if you go into the draft looking for a tackle, they might not be there at your selection. So I think that you tag Costanzo and then probably let him go next year because he is 32 years old, I believe, at this time. But you need to keep the offensive line well because we don't know if Brissett's going to be back there. We don't know if they're going to draft a guy like a Love or a Herbert as well. But I think that you need to keep the protection there. That offensive line has been one of the best offensive lines ever since they drafted Quentin Nelson. Ryan Kelly's been very, very good for them. And I'm missing a name, and it's on the top of my tongue, but I can't think of it. So I'll just go past it. But I think you need to keep Costanzo there to at least for one more year. You don't really have anybody else that needs a tag. So I think you do that. Then at number 22, I keep saying pick. At number 22, we have Matthew Judon. Remember, this isn't my list. Judon would be a little bit higher for me, but Matthew Judon at number 22, I have him getting a 4-year, $20 million a year contract from the New York Jets. The Jets want an edge rusher, and they want one bad. And I think you're going to get that in one of the better edge rushers that we have in the game right now in Judon. You just got Mosley, so Mosley and Judon can get there. You thought you were going to get that in Barr. So that money you were going to pay Barr, let's give it to Judon, and let's get you an edge rusher. I think he deserves the money. I think he deserves to be paid like one of the best edge rushers in the game because he had a great season, and he carried that Baltimore defense. But with Baltimore in this little fantasy world I have going, getting Clowney, I think you signed Judon to the Jets. They want that edge rusher that can rush the passer more than in the interior or disrupt the run, which is why they got rid of Leonard Williams. So get Judon. He fits what you want as a Jets owner or team or coach, whatever you want to say. You want somebody to attack the pass. Judon can do that at a high level. Mosley should be healthy next year. Jamal Adams will be fantastic as always. So I think that this team will take a huge, huge jump. Jets have a good amount of money. They have solid draft picks as well. So Matthew Judon would be a huge fit there, and then you can worry about the offense in the draft from there. So Matthew Judon, 4 years, $20 million a year to the Jets. Then we go on to Bud Dupree at number 23, 4 years, $17 million a year to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that he is one of those guys where they drafted him, they've invested in him, and he's proven to be a solid linebacker for them. Without Shazier probably ever playing again, you have Devin Bush, who had a very, very solid rookie season. I think you keep Dupree because Dupree and him worked well together. So why change it now? Once you get your quarterback back in Big Ben, I think this offense can do a lot more, and I think that will help the defense a lot more. So the team is still probably a playoff team, probably a wild card team now with the Ravens in their division, how good the Ravens are. But you need to keep your guy Dupree, $17 million a year for 4 years. I think he's earned that contract. I think that they are going to pay him that money because they like him in their eyes, in my opinion. Then you move on over to 24, Anthony Harris. I have him getting a nice deal from the Philadelphia Eagles, 4 years, $13.5 million. He's been a very, very solid free safety. He's been a pick machine. He's been getting interceptions so many times this past few seasons for the Vikings. So you go from there, and you pay him the money that they're not going to. They don't really have them. I think they're negative in cap space at this moment, to be honest. But you need to get a guy in that secondary that's going to be able to create turnovers. Malcolm Jenkins is great at the strong safety, but he's getting up there, even older in age. Corners are just not there, so you need to invest something in the secondary. Get a guy like Anthony Harris that can get interceptions because you just need somebody to be able to intercept the ball on that defense. So Anthony Harris would be big for them. They lock him up for 4 years. He'll be a solid free safety for them. And as they're in that same situation with the Cowboys, their win now window's closing. It's kind of now. When you look at the Giants and Redskins accumulating pieces that are younger and clearing cap space so they can make that push. So look for Anthony Harris to go to the Philadelphia Eagles for 4 years, $13.5 million. Then the final, I almost said pick again. I'm stuck in mock draft phase. But the final guy on Greg Rosenthal's list. Remember, I have 2 bonus guys at the end. But the final guy on the list is Jack Conklin. I have him getting a 5-year, $15 million a year contract from the New York Giants. Like I said, the Giants like to bunch up their things. You go up. You go back a couple years ago. They paid Janoris Jenkins. They paid Olivier Vernon, and there's someone else. I don't know why I'm blanking on who else they paid. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I'm blanking. But I don't think it was Solder. Solder was the year before, I believe, or the year after. But they paid 3 guys at one point, is what I'm trying to say. They paid 3 guys, and they had them kind of rejuvenate the team. They spent the money there, and they built through the draft. I think they have a solid base as a young team. Injuries hurt them a lot last year. Ingram went down. Peppers went down. Saquon went down. Even Daniel Jones had some time off due to injury. So you look at, they need help on the offensive line. We all know this. It's most likely that they might draft somebody in the draft. But I think that a lot of Giants fans are wanting Isaiah Simmons now because we've seen how much of a prototype he is and how insane he is on defense. So if you want that, I think you're going to have to keep Solder on the left. I think you just need to help somehow. So getting Jack Conklin will kind of shore up that offensive line even more. Zeitler, Hernandez have proven to be very, very good in the interior. Solder's been decent at times. He's been poor more than he definitely hasn't lived up to the contract that he got, unfortunately. But getting a guy like Conklin, it's a hit or miss. He's been a very, very solid right tackle for the Titans. He's been very good, in fact. But injuries have hurt him. But I think that you lock him down for multiple years, and you have your guy there. Him and Zeitler would be a great force on the right side. And any help that you can get to protect Saquon and Daniel Jones is huge. So Conklin to the Giants would be a huge pick for them. And that ends the 25 free agents. I've added 2 extras. They're both running backs. And I have them going to separate situations because they've been talked about a lot for the past year for various reasons. Not any of them good. But the first one is Melvin Gordon. I have him getting a $12 million a year contract for the next 3 years in Miami. Miami has so much money, and they need a lot. Kalen Ballage didn't work out. Patrick Laird is just more of a hyped guy on Twitter than anything else. So getting a guy like Melvin Gordon will really rejuvenate that offense. You won't have to waste a draft pick on a running back, and you get a guy who's proven to be one of the better running backs. He's not making that top running back dollars because when he came back, he wasn't the Melvin Gordon we thought he was before the holdout that he had, which kind of sucks. But I don't think he's going to stay in LA. I don't think LA wants to keep him after what was happening. So I see him walking on, and I think that Miami's going to be able to pay him a contract to where he's going to be the new running back for the Dolphins. I think it fits well. It's going to be a new era. I think people love Brian Flores. I think players probably want to play for him as well. So I have Melvin Gordon going to Miami, and I would love to see that. I think that would be really cool. And the last guy, the running back, that is one of my favorite running backs in the NFL. Obviously, I know what happened to him, but Kareem Hunt, I have him getting a $10 million a year contract for the next 4 years from Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, they drafted Ronald Jones, didn't really pan out. Peyton Barber has his games. Ronald Jones has his games, but none of them are consistent. You get a guy like Kareem Hunt, who has proven to be one of the better pass-catching running backs in the NFL this year, which was kind of crazy to see, but he was the running back to have. I mean, if you talk to any team a year ago or 2 years ago, if they were starting a team, they would want Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt was that good of a running back, and I think the talent's still there. I don't think the Browns are going to retain him. They have he is on a restricted contract, so they could match the contract, but I don't see them retaining him. They have Nick Chubb. There's no sense in wasting the money on Kareem Hunt as well, especially when you have the offense that you do. So I think that unless they keep Kareem Hunt, I think that he's going to be going somewhere else. I think Tampa's a great fit for him. That offense would just be really dynamic. O.J. Howard's still a talent. They're building that O-line. They have Evans and Godwin, obviously. So getting a guy like Kareem Hunt would really help them out huge, and I think that would be good. But that is it for the top 25 free agents, plus my little bonuses. These are just predictions. Let me know which guys you like out of this list. Who do you think? This is my list, but who do you think is more important of a free agent? Who's your favorite free agent? These are things that let's just get some conversations going in the comments. I love conversating with everybody that watches. I love watching people conversate as well. And on top of that, if you did stick it out this whole time, thank you so much. Make sure you leave a like on the podcast because it does help me out tremendously. Make sure to subscribe as well because we're posting a lot of videos involving free agency and the draft as well. And let me know what your team is, who you want your team to go after, and we'll go on from there. So without further ado, it is going to call the end of the podcast, and I will see you guys next week. So peace out.